to watch it later. So Father Paul, if you can lead us in prayer.
Okay. O Lord and Master of my life, do not permit me the spirit of laziness and meddling, the lust for power and idle talk to come into me. Instead, grant me, your servant, the spirit of prudence, humility, patience, and love. Yes, Lord and King, give me the power to see my own faults and not to judge my brother, for you are blessed unto the ages of ages. Amen. Prayer of Saint Ephrem the Syrian. All right, are we ready?
We're ready. This evening we are blessed to have with us two people. One I know a little bit better than the other because I met her before she got married. And she was actually came to the cathedral during our festival one year to be part of the ambassadors program for the school, if I remember correctly.
That is correct.
And that's when Father Paul and I had an opportunity to meet with Alyssa. And in that brief time that we had a chance to meet her, we were impressed by her in many different ways. And in the course of all the time that we've known her, we've actually kept a relationship going, not face-to-face, but digitally, believe it or not, through phones, emails, and other things. And Nico, technically, this is the first time I met him on, like the screen. So I'm really excited about it because I've heard of him. I've seen him on Facebook and pictures and various other things like that. Alyssa has said nothing but good things, Nico, so I'm really excited about that. So that's a good thing along the way. But this is really exciting because Alyssa had a chance to speak with us a few years back, and that was her by herself. And now she's with us this evening with her husband to talk to us about a wonderful topic. So I'm excited about this. I also failed to mention that Alyssa is also a graduate of our Hellenic College Holy Cross, and Nico works for the Department of Internet Ministries. Is that correct? Did I get it right?
Yep.
Okay.
You got it.
So we have a lot of really good resources here from theology all the way down to technology. So this is why this evening their presentation is going to encompass both, which is really exciting, and I'm ready to learn. So the floor is yours, Alyssa and Nico.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick. We put some slides together.
I also would like to preface, so we currently we've moved in with my parents. They're on the screen and currently in Florida. They're not here, but this is all of our stuff that doesn't really have a place. So please forgive the chaos that is behind us. I needed to preface with that. Sorry, go ahead.
That's fair. All right. So today we plan to talk about Orthodoxy online. I think this is a topic we're probably all a lot more familiar with over the past year, but it's something that has been going on for a number of years. So I think we'll just kick it off, just give you a little info about who each of us are, and then we'll dive right into it. So do you want to take it?
Sure. So as Father said, my name is Alyssa. I was born and raised in the metropolis of Pittsburgh in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, which is where we have recently moved back to. I'm a graduate of the University of Connecticut and also the seminary with a Master of Divinity. Ironically, I think yesterday was like the 4 years or 5 years or something since I spoke at your parish. I spoke about women in the church, and everybody was so gracious and so wonderful when I was there. But it was this week, so that was kind of random. And I also have a family connection at your church. Georgia Polizos actually baptized our son Nicholas, who is 2. And you may hear him crying at one point via our intercom. So I apologize ahead of time for that.
That's okay. All right. So my name is Nico Kiritsis. I am married to Alyssa. She brings me into all of these wonderful things, so it is a huge blessing. I was actually born and raised in Laramie, Wyoming, so a ways away, metropolis of Denver. My dad is currently a priest out in the metropolis of Denver. He's at the Assumption Cathedral. I do have a sister as well. She lives out in Boston. I attended Hellenic College, so I do have a bachelor's degree from there. But I think the thing that ties me most into this is that I work for the Department of Internet Ministries, which is a department of the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, and I've been doing that since 2009. So digital ministry has been kind of the forefront of my life for going on 12 years now. So hopefully we can kind of get into that a little bit, talk about not only this past year, but years prior, and kind of how we've all evolved to where we are. So that's who we are, and we'll take it away, jumping into technology. So technology. And the reason I want to start here is because I feel like so many of us think of technology and we think it's something digital or something electronic or something with a computer. But really, the definition I want to work from is that technology is just the practical application of knowledge, especially in a particular area. And the reason I want to start there is because I think that, especially as Orthodox Christians, sometimes we can struggle with the idea of taking our ancient faith, this faith that has been around for so long that we feel to be so correct and orthodox in definition. And it's hard to kind of see how technology or new things can kind of work their way into that. So I just want to touch on that briefly with technology. So some things that are technologies that are not electronic. Roads were a technology. At one point there were not roads, and now we have roads. The written language was a technology, and telephones are another technology. So the reason I mention these three technologies is because all of them have something in common, which most technologies do. There was a time when people were very against these ideas, these technologies. And that's important to remember, because if we were to think about it now and talk about roads or the written language or even home phones, which many of us probably don't have anymore, we would say they were probably all a net positive. They all benefited our lives and they all propelled humanity forward in some positive way. So I want to frame it that way because there was a time when that was not thought to be the case. Roads, for example, they connected the world. They really allowed us to travel. But at the same time, when roads were being constructed, that allowed your enemies, the people from other communities, to come in and attack easier. Likewise with writing, St. Paul obviously wrote his letters. We are able to read the Bible thanks to the printing press and otherwise, and the written word is so important to us. But there was a time, if we go back, way back to ancient Greece, there's some of the writings from Plato where Socrates is actually thinking about writing, and he talks about how writing will destroy our memory and it will weaken our mind because we will no longer use our brains to focus on things we know, but instead we will rely on other means to do that. I think a similar argument could be probably made with technology nowadays, with phones and otherwise, but there was a time when writing was thought to be a bad thing. Similarly, home phones, they allowed us to communicate and they allow us to talk to people throughout the world. But when they were first being introduced into the homes, there were preachers who were actually preaching against the use of home phones, because there's this idea of having a privacy or a sanctity in your own home where you and your family could kind of retreat and spend time together. And the idea of putting this box in your house that can make noise and all of a sudden interrupt that privacy was a big deal. So there was this idea that we shouldn't be getting into these things. So why am I saying all of this? Because we're seeing this pattern from all of these technologies. First, some new technology is introduced. Then we start to have concerns about how it's going to change us. And then eventually we're able to see that there's a cost and a value trade-off to that. And if we feel that that value is worth it, then eventually we adopt that technology. So for me, within my digital ministry, it's been the exact same process. Instead of just saying, you know, all these technologies seem bad, or I've heard so many bad things about the internet or social media or whatever it is, our process has always been, we need to first figure out what value it can bring, see if we're able to sanctify that space as Orthodox Christians, and then either welcome it in or find ways to move around that technology. So I just want to frame our conversation going forward with that. So that we have the ability to kind of think about this technology with an open mind. I will say personally for myself as well, there's a lot of technologies that I'm not a fan of or I don't like, or digital things as well. So I'm not going to try and push technology on anyone. I just want us all to be on the same page here and say, you know, there's something to grow from here. So jumping to present day. Very briefly, the Department of Internet Ministries is where I work. It's a department of the Archdiocese, and it was actually started in 1994. So the Archdiocese has been thinking about, or almost been on the forefront for Christian churches with technology, because we have had a dedicated department who is focused on doing ministry digitally since 1994. The mission of our department has always been from Mark 16, chapter 16, verse 15. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation." So whenever we're looking at anything digital or anything in this landscape, we're always saying, how can we use this for this great commission? How can we go out and how can we sanctify whatever space it is to make it okay for Orthodox Christians to be there and to reach people using the gospel? So that's always been kind of the direction we've gone. And it's been a huge blessing to be able to do that in my life. As a side note as well, if anyone's familiar with the Archdiocese, there is also an IT department. That is a different department. We work very closely together. But IT departments and people like that are typically going to be doing your troubleshooting on the phone or fixing, printers or servers or computers. We as a department, our primary mission is to find out how to build new digital ministry and how to make digital ministry accessible for parishes, metropolises, archdioceses, and the Orthodox Church at large. So just very quickly, hopefully some of you at least know what our department does, or maybe not, maybe you really don't have to, but some of the things or the tools we've offered. Hopefully they've been helpful in your daily lives. So the thing we're mostly known for would be goarch.org. This is the primary website of the Archdiocese. It's the official web presence. It has been around since 1996. This is not the way it looked in 1996, but it's gone through a couple revisions. And this has kind of been the place for the Archdiocese to be present online for going on almost 30 years at this point. In addition, we've always offered email and listserv to parishes. This is long before the Gmails and the Yahoos and things existed. We also created a service called Iconograms. This was also an earlier service that we provided. It still exists. But if you'll remember e-greeting cards early on, probably late 1990s, early 2000s, there was the ability to send a greeting card to your friends, to your loved ones, to wish them a happy birthday or maybe a Merry Christmas or something like that. And we as a department saw a need for people to be able to reach out using these beautiful icons as well. The ability to reach out for people's name days, or other feasts of the church, and just let people know you're thinking about them, you're praying for them, and reaching out that way. We've also created Orthodox Jobs, which is the only Orthodox specific jobs board online. A lot of people are able to find jobs working in Orthodox spaces through this, and likewise parishes as well as metropolises and organizations have found people who are connected to the Orthodox faith to work in their professions as well. Another space that we have gone into is technology safety. And this is something that we've actually partnered with the Catholic Church, the USCCB, which is the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. This initiative was brought on because we saw a huge need for the church to be present in our homes, in our lives, and in our families, not in some privacy invoking way, but as opposed to a way for families to know how to be safe online. There's a lot of people and even churches out there who feel stay away from it at all costs because it's bad and there's bad things there and you shouldn't be present. We realize that is not possible. So we created an initiative with the Catholic Church and we try to approach these issues that families have with privacy, but also all of the kind of bad and dark spaces on the internet to help people steer clear of those. The initiative actually allowed us to make connections with large technology corporations, one of which was Google, another was Facebook. We have sat on boards for both of those companies. Facebook specifically has a religious freedom section of their company that focuses on religious institutions using Facebook and social media for positive ways within their religious expressions. So we've had an ability as the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese, I don't know that many people are aware of this, but there are GoArch representatives in some of these companies to help kind of guide the directions that they're going and help try and promote positive attitudes. We have also done parish websites, which is something that we're very well known for. We have at this point about 70% of all GOA parishes in the country run through our department. There are live streams, which we're going to talk a lot more about in a little bit, but live streaming is something we have done as a department as well since 1997. So I think a lot of us probably know it from the last year because we've all had to, but back in 1997, the Department of Internet Ministries was broadcasting liturgical services online. The first service we ever broadcasted was from Holy Cross Church in Belmont, California, just as a little fun fact. But since then, we've had obviously a lot more from there. And we actually have some statistics on actual numbers a little bit later. In addition, our department is very well known for our Daily Readings app, as well as the Daily Readings email and the online chapel itself. This is a way that we have found to take the prescribed readings of the day that the church has laid out for us. Anyone can find them that wants to through the books. And the problem is that not a lot of people know how to do that. So by creating a digital version of that and making it accessible to everyone, we've found and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback from people who have made it part of their daily prayer lives to actually read the prescribed gospel and epistle readings each day. So it's very rewarding as well to kind of do these things with technology and kind of do coding and things like that, but to be able to bring someone some spiritual happiness in some way has always been very positive. In addition to apps, we have also created smart TV apps. So the ability to use a larger space in your home to watch a liturgical service and be able to do that directly from your TV. So you don't have to crowd the family around a iPad or a computer screen. You can actually sit in front of a large TV and watch liturgical services as well. So those are just very quickly some of the things our department has created and produced. And then I also just wanted to touch on a few other digital presences that we've had through international orthodoxy. So very briefly, in 2013, we had an opportunity to go to the Fanar, which is where His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew lives. This is where he is headquartered and where all of the prayers coming out of the Patriarchate come from. But we were asked to go and visit to help create a new website for the Patriarchate. And in doing so, we saw an opportunity to take a virtual reality tour, create a virtual tour of the actual Fanar building. I don't want to get too far into the specifics, but it is a very, very difficult place for the ecumenical patriarch to be. There's a lot of oppression going on, and he has a very difficult time being there, but through his pious life, he sticks there and he continues to lead our church from a place where he is oppressed every day. It's amazing to see this building because it's beautiful and magnificent, but at the same time, it's in disrepair because he's unable to bring even people in to repair things that are falling apart, wallpaper coming off walls, cracks in walls, all of those things. He just can't do it. The government will not allow that. So we saw this opportunity to go over and record the entire building for historical purposes. And we created a full 3D tour of the Fanar for him. So in this picture that's on the screen, I'm in the background with a tie on. I'm running a server that is showing him the Fanar. So he's sitting at his desk and walking around the Fanar digitally, which brought him a lot of joy, but it was really nice to see the head of our church kind of embracing this technology, even in a small way, which was really, really a cool experience. Another place that we've been able to go was for the Apostolic Pilgrimage in 2014. This was the first time that the East and the West Christian churches met in over 50 years. Prior to that, they met once in 65, but before that, it was over 500 years. So a historic event in the life of the church, and taking place in Jerusalem. There was not a whole lot of digital presence that we could get based on internet connections. So the picture that's on the screen now is from the Church of the Nativity, which is in Bethlehem, and this is the site where Jesus Christ was born. So we had a service that was done there, and we were charged with getting that online. And we had laptops, which is helpful because they have batteries, but we also had small cell phones to try and connect to the internet and push this broadcast out. We were unable to find power outlets anywhere because obviously these churches were built way before power outlets. I happened to walk out in a courtyard and found one power outlet for the entire area. So I plugged in my modems and I'm sitting there on this bench that is probably close to 1,400 years old, and slowly uploading a video that people were able to watch the same day that service took place. So taking kind of our knowledge and our digital side of things into the Orthodox world and being able to share that with people in close to real time was very special. And lastly, we were present at the Holy and Great Council, which took place in 2016. This was at the Orthodox Academy in Crete. 10 of the 14 autocephalous churches were present, and this was the first time we had a council of this magnitude in hundreds of years in the Orthodox Church. So they got together to discuss specific points and specific things to try and help everyone's spiritual lives and kind of the direction of the church. But to be present on this campus and to be able to see, I mean, you saw kind of these hierarchs and the patriarchs walking around with bishops surrounding them in all their black robes, and it was a very special sight to see. But we actually left a mark there as well on Crete. The internet at the time was not fast enough throughout the island, so we ended up contracting with a company, and we created a trench with over 100 yards of cable running up to the academy, which now has the fastest internet in Crete, because we had to do that for the Holy Council. So we left our mark there, and it was a very special experience. In this picture, I'm sitting on the opposite side of a wall from where His All Holiness is delivering his opening address and broadcasting it out to the world so people could experience that in real time throughout the international world of Orthodoxy. So I tell you all this just to kind of remind everyone that the digital life has always been a part of the Orthodox Church. Maybe not always, maybe that's not the right word, but over the past 20 to 30 years, it's been very present. Even if we don't necessarily want to include it that much, or we want to stay away as much as possible, there's been a lot going on. But that's not all to say that this is all good things. There's obviously a lot of problems with technology too, and a huge portion of what we do is trying to find that balance and make sure we're not going too far with it. I think the Faith and Safety Initiative especially is one example of where we've seen there are certain times when we need to try and keep reining things in as well, because there's a lot of things that are unsafe and unholy out there that we can't just ignore and pretend they're not there, but at the same time, we can't just let people say, figure it out yourselves. So a couple just quick examples I have. I wanted to kind of juxtapose the picture here, which is people staring at their phones. I know we've all had these experiences. We're all together, yet we're all in separate worlds with our phones. And just remind us from Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. You know, when we think about that verse, there's somewhat of an implication there that if we're not being still and we're not focusing, we're not going to be able to know God that way. So, you know, these technologies, while they can be helpful, we also need to be vigilant around them. Another one, if we think back to the early church in Acts 2, we're looking at this community and how everyone was very community focused. We had the role of deacons brought out so that they could actually take care of the community. And there's kind of this contradiction that we're facing where we all feel like we're part of community, or we feel like we have so many friends through social media, when really that's not seeming to be the case. Technology somehow is stripping the sense of community away without us even realizing that. One of the quotes I loved about social media that I've recently seen was that social media gives us more potential for connection than any other time in human history, yet we may feel more disconnected than ever. And I think a lot of us can really feel that after this past year, where we really haven't been able to leave our homes, and social media has been one of the only ways to connect with people. So it's a tool that's given us a lot of very impersonal ways that we're trying to fill the need for personal interactions in our lives. So personally, I can really empathize with those who are weary of technology. Living this day to day, I can see a lot of pros, but also a lot of cons. By no means is technology always the best option. We know our church is focused on community ever since the beginning, and in-person ministry will always have that edge based on human needs. So then the question becomes, how do we respond when we are forced to use technology? That's kind of the direction we're headed here. I think we all had to come to terms with that to some extent in this past year. But one person I know who spent a lot of time on that question is my beautiful wife, Alyssa. So now I'm going to turn it over to her and let her talk a little bit about her experiences.
Okay, so something I didn't mention in my intro is that I actually served as the pastoral assistant of St. John the Divine in Jacksonville, Florida. So for 6.5 years, I was blessed to serve in your lovely metropolis. And, you know, while I worked at a parish, I actually appreciated what my husband did even more. So this picture is very intense, and I chose it purposely because I think we can all remember the day that our church doors closed. We can all remember it. We have that gut feeling, that almost sickness that you felt when you heard that you couldn't come to church. And I remember feeling a sense of guilt on that day because I could attend church since I was the only chanter of our parish that was under the age of 65. And at that point, I was the only one even eligible to attend. So it was myself and Father Nick, and that was it. So, you know, as morbid as it may sound, I pray that this is a day that none of us will forget ever. And I think I found this quote by St. Mark the Ascetic, and I think he puts it really beautifully when he says, "You should continually and unceasingly call to mind all the blessings which God in his love has bestowed on you in the past and still bestows for the salvation of your soul." So that makes sense. You must not let forgetfulness of evil or laziness make you grow unmindful of these many and great blessings, and so pass the rest of your life uselessly and ungratefully. That's an intense one. And I think it's very important because of where we are today. We all remember the day the doors closed, that dark day, but now we were yearning for so long to re-enter the doors. And I know, like, the moment they opened at our church, it was just a celebration. It was magnitude. It was Christ's joy just overcoming us. But none of us will ever forget what that loneliness and that emptiness felt like. And we shouldn't forget, because we should remember what it felt like being left outside of those doors, being withheld from our church family, our worship, and most importantly, the sacred body and blood of Christ. Can you imagine, though, the pain that we would have felt without technology? at this time? What if this happened 50 years ago when streaming a service didn't exist? How would we have been witnesses to our church services? We would have been home alone. We wouldn't have had that connection. So in reality, technology in a big way came through when it came to this pandemic. So I want to share some statistics that were taken back in April of 2020 by the Pew Research Center. So here, the blue shows churches that closed their services to the public. So this was a year ago. So indeed, there were some who were open, but the highest that were open was like 7%. Aside from historically Black churches, every other religion was in the 90s. So to put this into perspective, there are around 20,000 Catholic churches in the United States. That means that 18,800 were closed. 18,800. So looking at this and seeing these numbers, we as Orthodox Christians, we weren't alone. There were other people that were also suffering and being withheld from their sacraments, from their services, from their community. So what I found stunning is how much of these churches were able to move their services online and online quickly. Again, this second graph is April 2020, so weeks after the lockdowns had been established. I remember seeing all over Facebook and Instagram, people pleading for help of, what streaming service is the best? Can you subscribe to my YouTube? We need 1,000 subscribers so it'll go live. Questions of what platform was most easily accessible to people. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, and from the opposite side of that too, we as the Department of Internet Ministries have created resources in the past to help people get online and get services online. But I can say up until around February, probably late February of 2020, we had listed less than 30 parishes streaming on the Archdiocese website. Now, in fairness, that accounts for only parishes that were streaming directly through the department and not ones who had gone through YouTube or Facebook or other services. But as of today, there are 177 parishes listed on the Archdiocese website with regular services being streamed. So it's wild to see how quickly that went, and from all sides, either trying to figure out how to do it or how to create resources for parishes to do it. We were creating guides very quickly with, you only have a cell phone and a battery backup. Here's how you can stream your services. And we even hit roadblocks with trying to create small kits that parishes could purchase to set up a higher quality stream, because so many places were sold out of any live broadcasting solutions or anything tangentially related to live broadcasting. Microphones were sold out. Any type of video camera was sold out. Everyone was trying to find and scramble as quickly as possible to get some type of live broadcasting up and online.
So here with the second graph, we see the lowest number that we're streaming online is 73%. And it blows my mind to think of all the Christian messages that were finally at our fingertips. It's energizing to think how much Christ was coming into technology, into the technological world. And I know so many friends who chose to experience different churches during this time because they could. And now sometimes too many options isn't always the best thing, and maybe you would church hop a little too frequently. But how cool is it to see how other Orthodox churches operate the same beautiful faith that we experience every Sunday and really every day? So most churches focused on streaming their services first, and I totally respect that. I think that should have been the priority. But once that was operational, what were we to do about our ministries? So this sign, as you can see, reads, First Day of Distance Youth Ministry, 13th year, March 23rd, 2020. I made this sign in response to a mom in my parish who had done the same for her children as they began the new adventure of virtual learning. So I'm sure that you all have seen some similar picture to this. A parent has their kid, hold a sign about the upcoming school year, but a lot of parents in my own church shared their children distance learning and this first experience of distance learning. So I sent it to the parent and we kind of had a laugh about it because I didn't think it would last more than maybe a month or two, but clearly that was very wrong. So I've been blessed to do youth ministry in some capacity for the past 14 years now. I should probably update that sign. From 2014 to 2020, I had spent my time as the pastoral assistant at St. John the Divine in Jacksonville, Florida. And 2020 was by far my most memorable year there. there isn't a class in seminary called Running Youth Programs Online. So I can't say I also found much literature. There just didn't exist. So when the world threw our ministry a curveball, we had no choice but to adapt and move everything virtual. Within 1 week of quarantine orders, our programs were up and running. Under the leadership of my proistamenos at the time, Father Nicholas Lowe, we had established ministries for all ages that took place entirely through Zoom. And I want to show some pictures to give you an idea of what we did. So here you can see some pictures from youth ministries. I'm going to start in the upper left, make my way over. So in the upper left, I'm actually meeting with my kumbadas Goya in Roslindale, Massachusetts. So going to seminary enabled me to connect with a lot of people across the country and connect my kids with kids they would probably have not met before. So that was always fun to have, special visitors in our meetings. We had missionaries come and speak to our kids. The top right, that's actually my backyard in Jacksonville, Florida. And I dressed up as a crazy scientist and did ridiculous science experiments and connected it to Christianity. Bottom left, we played Food Network sometimes and would cook meals together. And then the bottom right, we of course did virtual Sunday school. We also hosted Wednesday night Bible studies for all the kids. We did game nights, service projects. We welcomed guest speakers, talent shows. I mean, the list went on and on and on. And personally, so many of my ideas were not only from my friends from seminary, but also youth workers of other religions. So in Jacksonville, we had a really nice cohort of youth workers that would meet periodically of different faith base and kind of help each other out. So that was, for me, a major support system in my ministry at that time. We also hosted some of our adult ministries online. So here in the upper left, you can see, if anyone knows Father Nicholas Lowe, he's right there. And he was leading a Wednesday night Bible study. Our moms ministry learned how to make sourdough bread. We did prayer rope making with our young adults. And of course, our Bible studies and book studies were able to continue online. Time and Despondency was a very special book to read during that time. If anyone hasn't read it, I highly recommend it. And eventually we ended up hosting our general assemblies on Zoom, our town halls on Zoom. If anyone knows anything about Jacksonville, we were right in the midst of building a church. So many times we needed to meet to get approvals for various things, and Zoom was the only way to do it. The best part of this though, it was stressful. It was a lot of computer time, but organically our conversations always seemed to stem around Christ and the church. So I could be, making a quiche with my Goya, and somehow someone would bring up how much they missed being in church, or would ask if Jesus Christ is present during this pandemic. Why would he let it happen? And it was clear from the very beginning that this major shift in the world was affecting members of our parish, especially our young children. So we tried our best to keep a sense of normalcy, hosting our typical annual events. Two that come to mind personally are our Goya graduation party and our vacation Bible school. So in these pictures, we surprised all of our graduates and casually showed up at their house and silly stringed them, left them little signs, gave them little gifts just to show them that we love them and we care about them. Because at this point, their graduation was online. We had no Sunday school graduation, anything. So we wanted to honor our graduates in a fun way. We also hosted our Vacation Bible School, which is a week-long program, always hosted at St. John the Divine. We typically get between 100 to 125 kids. But we decided let's keep doing it. We'll just make it virtual. And as registrations came in for this, I noticed that almost half of them were outside of Jacksonville, Florida, and at least a fourth of them were out of state. And I'm talking not even in the metropolis of Atlanta. Parents and children were so hungry for an Orthodox camp. And it was beautiful to welcome children into our program who would not have been there otherwise. Our first day, I was reminded that Orthodoxy spans to the ends of the earth. It's so easy to kind of get focused on your own parish and your own, parea, your cliques, but it's so much bigger than that. And it's easy to get lost in that. So positive of this pandemic is the ability to include anyone and everyone in our ministry, no matter where they live or what time zone they reside. So this program went all week, and VBS was the most successful ministry we had to date. I don't know about you guys, but once a week, my phone sends me the dreaded message. It updates me on my screen time usage. When I inevitably see how high that number is, I vow that I'm going to make it shrink so I can work on my prayer life, read scripture, spend more time with my family and friends. But during the months our churches were closed, that number had gone out the window. Our ministries could not survive without the use of screen time. However, I kind of kept my promise. In our online gatherings, we would pray together. We would read God's word together. We spent time together. All things, I wanted to accomplish. I just never thought that I would accomplish them in that way. Now we see that a lot has gone back to normal. Thank God. Thank God. My current parish, All Saints Greek Orthodox Church in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, just began doing things in person 2 weeks ago. In Jacksonville, we did things safely outside from October on. But for some of us, church in person is still not an option. Attending a meeting in the church hall just won't work for us. Whether it be health issues or necessity, worshiping from home is still happening for so many faithful. So what can we do to make that experience better? First, we can create a sacred space. So it's very easy just to plop on the couch and, watch it in your PJs. That sounds like, it'd be nice. And some of us probably got into that habit. So I think it's important to create a sacred space to actually worship. So if you have an icon corner, you can, put an iPad there. If you have a nice TV that you want to use, put some iconography around it, some candles. You can, light a candle to remove distracting items, set out chairs to actually sit in so you're not sitting on a couch, find pillows to kneel on, just prepare a sacred space somewhere that you don't frequent, somewhere not close to the kitchen, things like that. You can also prepare your own temple. So when you wake up, don't go to church, virtual church in your PJs. Get ready as if you're going to church. Put on a dress, put on a suit, fix your hair, do your makeup, whatever it is that you do to get ready on a typical Sunday, keep that routine. And especially those with young children, it's wonderful to keep them in that consistency. Fast. I know that when you're home, you're not going to receive the body and blood unless the priest, is making a pastoral visit to you later on. But still, prepare as if you're going to. And then, instead of just, sitting there eating and watching. And also ask forgiveness from your family members. This is something that I want to get in a better habit of doing in general. But, before you receive, you are really supposed to seek forgiveness from those that you may have wronged. So continue that tradition of seeking forgiveness. And finally, participate in the service fully. So turn off your phones, unless obviously you're using it to worship, you're using that screen. Kneel when you're supposed to kneel, stand when you're supposed to stand, sit when you should sit. During communion, obviously you're not able to receive at that time, but if you have holy water, drink some holy water. Do something that can kind of keep you in that mindset. Kiss your icons and light a candle. And, follow along in a book or a printout of the service. Ages is unbelievable. Digital chant stand, that's a really wonderful tool to use. You can access it. They have an app. You can print it if you prefer that. But it's just so easy to stay connected in that way. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I can see it, and I'm really excited about it. So in March of 2020, nearly all religions claimed that between 90 and 94% of their churches were closed. Now, 1 year later, those numbers are dwindling. Through God's grace, we can see a light. We're now seeing that those not opened range from 36 to as low as 8%. I look forward to the world where all those read 0, where the churches that are closed are 0%. And in these numbers today, I see hope because they're getting better.
So we saw a dramatic shift over the last year for all of our lives. I think for many different reasons, we are inherently different than we were 1 year ago. It's hard to say what the long-term lasting effects will be, but I think the next year is going to be very telling for all of us. Many businesses, for example, who were all very anti-work from home or had policies completely banning it, have come out in full support of it. And for a lot of them, they're actually transitioning to more work from home models. This was somewhat of a forced experiment for a lot of businesses, and it saw a huge rise in productivity from those working from home and a drastic decrease in operating expenses for businesses. Likewise, Orthodox live broadcasts saw a sharp rise in viewership at the beginning of the pandemic as well. Watching the trends, looking at the numbers, it's become very clear that people are burned out on this experience and the world through screens in general. We had looked at some of the numbers early on and lately, and we're seeing the amount of people who would watch a broadcast from start to finish, not just the 3-second views Facebook tells us about, have dropped by almost 70% from the beginning of the pandemic. So it's important that we remember that our liturgies and sacraments were never meant to be passive. Not only were they not meant to be online, but they're not meant to be passive even if we're in the pews. They're not merely entertainment for us. To fully experience and partake in the sacraments, we must be present. The technology that allowed us to stay connected to our worship and gave us the opportunity to pray at home should never be seen as a replacement for attending our churches. My hope is that people have a reignited desire to go out and experience things in the world, in person, when it's safe to do so. Obviously, we all have a responsibility to take care of each other and ourselves. We need to focus on our communities and do everything we can to bring our brothers and sisters back to the pews. Being able to share the Orthodox faith online is a huge blessing. We have a reach beyond anything that the apostles could have ever fathomed. But we must remember, reaching people is only the first step to bringing them into our communities. If we learn to use these new technologies and find a way to sanctify that space, we can fulfill the commandment of Jesus Christ and go out into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. That's our presentation.
We'd love to open if anyone has any, questions that they want to ask.
Sure. So the way that we'll do that, if you guys can stop sharing your screen, that'd be great.
Sure.
You can see everybody. As a reminder to everyone, if you want to ask questions, down in the reactions section, if you're on a laptop or computer or desktop, down at the bottom, you'll see a thing that says reactions. You click on that and you'll be able to raise your hand. If you're on some kind of mobile device, phone or iPad, it'll be at the top of your screen and it'll be top right, and you'll hit reactions and you'll say raise hand, and you'll raise your hand, we'll call on you. And if you haven't yet updated your Zoom, it will still be under the chat function where it says raise hand. So we'll do that and it'll come up in order and we'll go from there. I am not shocked by this, but Gigi has her hand raised. So Gigi, followed by Father Paul.
Well, I wanted to say how much I enjoyed your presentation, and my husband is now home. And we're sorry that you've left the church we're now attending, but because we've moved to Jacksonville from Atlanta.
No way!
But, yeah.
Oh,
so that's why I said that.
Jacksonville.
That's why I said welcome to your parents.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay.
Yeah, too bad you left. So, but what I wanted to ask you, which is not something you spoke about, and feel free to say, I don't want to talk about this tonight. How do you see technology and things online, resources for Orthodox and people who are seeking the Orthodox Church, some who don't know it or come upon it kind of accidentally? How do you see that being controlled? And by that, I mean quality control in the future, because we're going to move now back to the churches and we're not going to be online as much, although for the weekday services, that's kind of nice for us, for those of us who are working outside the home or even in the home. Like tonight I ran late because I had work to do and I couldn't jump on the pre-sanctified liturgy service, but I usually do. So how do you see those kinds of things? But this may not be the forum to talk about it, may not be the day to talk about it, but I would be interested at a later time even in your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to kind of jump into that, and you'll share your thoughts as well. I think that all parishes at this point are going to need to kind of evaluate what they're offering. I know a lot of us did it out of necessity, and a lot of parishes did live broadcasting because that was the only option. There were a lot of states where if you weren't live broadcasting, you couldn't even have the clergy go to church that day. So for some churches, it was literally required to be open. I think parishes need to now evaluate and see, was that an effective part of their ministry? Is it something they want to continue? And if so, to what level, and how do they want to continue doing that? I think there is value to continuing to serve that option. I know I've had discussions with a lot of clergy and laity over years, and a lot more people are open to it. There was a time early on when a lot of people were very against it because they thought it meant no one would come to church again. I know most churches that do stream year round and prior to the pandemic did not see those trends. They saw that actually more people would come, or people would actually kind of do a trial visit to their church online and then get the opportunity to come in later. So there's a lot there, but again, it'll be on a parish to parish level. I think other resources and things that are available, we're kind of coming to a time when we're all starting to realize anyone can put whatever they want on the internet. So when it comes to resources, especially things about teaching us about our faith, teaching us about what it means to be Orthodox, we need to be careful both of the source, but also make sure we're checking secondary sources for that. You know, even articles that come out from, I'll take myself as an example from the Archdiocese. There are certain articles that are up that are maybe 40 years old at this point. Maybe they were written in the 80s or 90s. And that's not to say that the faith has changed, but it's certainly possible that people will not interpret things in the same way through the same context because it's, you know, written in a time that was different. So I think we all need to make that concerted effort with anything, not just the Orthodox faith, to make sure we're checking everything. You know, we're going to a secondary source. We're validating things that we find. And hopefully, as we're all more comfortable with the internet, we will start to see a lot of really good resources, and we can all depend on them more reliably because we have that track record of knowing that they were reliable sources.
Father Paul?
I'm not sure where to begin now, except to say where Nico finished is to say that we should always go through our local church, the Archdiocese, our metropolis, to kind of check on something if it seems strange or seems out of line with our teachings. Now, there are some pretty bizarre things out there, so you have to be very careful. The other thing is I just want to say thank you because I know for me, it made me feel good to see that while none of us had this experience ever in life or in the church life, the things that we did to keep people engaged with their faith and to be able to do things that we had never done before. We had to be creative. We had to, you know, whoever thought of making paper palms or whatever, you know, or just different things that we did and are still doing. Or even all the e-commerce opportunities, in a sense, we had, you know, and still have things that we never would have dreamed of before that would be the most effective way of communication. You know, of course, naturally, we were blessed because we had live streaming for a year before the pandemic. So we were ready. We only had one camera, but it was a really good one. Now we have 3 really good ones. But we also had a team already in place, a communications committee. In fact, we have 2 of the members here besides myself, and that's Father Christos and Stephen Paniotu, who has excellent experience in broadcasting and knowing how to position the camera with different shots and things, set shots. So it's really been interesting. The other thing too is that while it was a very sad time when the church doors closed, we never closed. And even though we were threatened by a neighbor and by the police, we were able to keep the office open. And even the personnel, I have to give them a lot of credit because they never said, oh, we're not coming in or we're afraid or anything like that. And they've been steady the whole time. And they even participated in some of our silly videos that we made, our little teaching videos. Especially my favorite was when we put a ladder up next to the office complex and we were doing a lesson on St. John of the Ladder. And Father Christos climbed the ladder. I went on the roof and was supposed to be welcoming him into God's heavenly kingdom. And no one fell, which is a really good thing. So, but it really has been an experience with challenges, some, I'll say some sadness, but also there's been many blessings that we never realized we would have, like having, you know, over 1,500 viewers on Holy Thursday evening. You know, we never get more than 200 and something people in the church on Holy Thursday. So to have that experience, it's been, you know, good. Now we are kind of at that point where we're trying to figure out ways to get people to feel comfortable to come back to church and to also make it a part of their their life again, that they are going to get dressed, as you said, not just staying at home, but to actually come to the church, have fellowship, be with their fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. And because we all need that. Salvation is not isolated, and it's not sitting in our living room or anywhere else. We need each other for encouragement. So keep that in mind as we get to these even holier days. They're already holy, but they're becoming more so. And but God bless you both, because I didn't know so much about Nico's experience in internet ministries, but I've been using it a long time. Just to give you perspective, Nico and Alyssa, the first computer I worked on was in St. Louis at the parish there of St. Nicholas in 1987. And it was a IBM Model 30.
Wow.
It had a hard drive, 20 megs, 20 megs. Oh my gosh, you can't even, get this little phone out.
Yeah.
You can't do anything with 20 megs. But we thought we were like geniuses because we had that then. But the other thing too, let's open it up and see now. I did want to say one other thing very important, and that is in your home parish, both yours and your parents, we want to ask everyone to pray for Father George Livanos, who unfortunately has lung cancer, and it's most likely toward the end of his life. And so there was a wonderful Holy Unction service for him, and the Archbishop came, and my cumbaro, Father John Talumas, is very close friends with Father George for decades, and we were all schoolmates. And so it's sad to hear that he's so sick, but he's been such a champion of the faith, and even though he's certainly suffered along the way. So keep him in your prayers, Father George Livanos. So you shy folks from Annunciation, you have any questions or any thoughts?
We have time, Father, for about one more question, if there's
any. No.
I will say, I was the one thing, there was many positives also about the pandemic that helped people really maybe understand more about their faith. But from a perspective of likes, like you said, Alyssa and Nico, we were at about 400 subscribers before the pandemic. And I made a challenge, and Father Paul was very gracious, as was His Eminence, to mention everybody go and like the Cathedral. And we got, in about 2.5 weeks or so, we got about 500 more subscribers.
Wow.
Wow. Really good. And then we couldn't hit our 1,000 because I needed that number. And we got it. Now we're like at 1,200. So this is fantastic. It was really
we all have 10 email addresses now.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But we did. It was nice. But it was, I think it was for us as clergy, the other experience is that we did Holy Week, well, most of Great Lent, Holy Week, Pentecost, and whatnot, with not one hierarch, but with two. So it was a good thing because it's a teaching experience. So when clergy call now and ask questions about His Eminence is coming, His Grace is coming, how do they want the service done? I said, this is great. Here's the link to what we did last year. Go look and you'll see how to do the service. So it was,
that's great.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, I've made that call several times to you.
Right. All right, so one more question, and then if there's any other ones, there may not be. Valine, I see Valine hand up. You have to unmute, Valine.
For your wonderful presentation. We're very excited to see you. I was just wondering, the smaller parishes that perhaps don't have the means to do, a lot of the technology or even simple technology. Is there does the Archdiocese offer any financial assistance to these smaller parishes, or any, let's get you equipment, maybe it's not so great, but maybe it would help you? Or is there any outreach to the smaller, the smaller parishes who genuinely don't have the means to do what the other parishes do?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. The first response I would say is that most of the services through the Department of Internet Ministries are free. So a lot of the parishes that take advantage of what we do, websites, things like that, they come through us because we will help build it and develop it for them. And then we host it for them for free. So there's no cost to the parishes to do that. We have also, though, started recently to help with I think it's I don't remember the exact name for it now, but it's a liturgical item clearinghouse, essentially. And it's a way for parishes to post liturgical items that they're no longer using. Maybe they've upgraded or done something else. And parishes in need can go and find liturgical items they need to do that. And we've actually had discussions internally in our department to do something similar for computer equipment and cameras as well, especially after this past year with live broadcasting, trying to help parishes who have extra find parishes that need it, or parishes that have upgraded, find parishes where they can give their equipment for a new good home. So excellent question. And there's a little bit, but I would say hopefully there's more on the horizon.
And I think to add to that, our parish was in the midst of moving out of our church when the pandemic hit. So we'd actually already switched out a lot of our camera equipment. So our Holy Week, all of our services, we used my cell phone. So we just, set up my cell phone. There was a pile of books and I plopped it right on top. And that's, we were able to stream on Facebook, and I'm glad I married a tech genius and he connected to our website. So, as long as people have a smartphone, then they're able to stream through their Facebook pages, which is a huge blessing.
And a smart husband would help.
Yeah, that's smart. There you go.
Or wife.
Well, we thank you very much for a wonderful presentation and for giving us a nice lecture and thought process about technology and the usage of it. And a lot of the things that you were saying, especially at the beginning, I didn't click on me until you started saying that like the phone is technology, and writing is technology, because we're just so used to it. And I just think about the difference. And Father, you can talk about this too. When you had your computer, which I saw, by the way, in a computer museum, by the way, Father, I don't know if it was your.
I just want to make a disclaimer. I did not have that phone that you saw on the wall. I did have something a bit more sophisticated than that when I was growing up.
But I mean, I think about like just when things when I was growing up were, just coming out, like cell phones were not until late 90s, early 2000s were when it was easy to get. And I had already I was already past high school when those things came out. Whereas I look at John, and John has always grown up with an iPhone, an iPad, computers, and things like that. So I can understand how sometimes we take these basic technology that we think are everyday and have always been around, haven't been. So thank you for all the wonderful things that you taught us today. And I encourage all of you, of course, to go back to the presentation, which will be up on our website later on tonight or early tomorrow, depending on when it renders and when Zoom allows it to come to the cloud. But it'll be there. Share it with your friends and family so that they can learn about this wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Father Paul and Father Christos, for inviting us. It was an honor.
Thank you very much.
For us.
Thank you.
And Father Christo, we'd like to ask you for the closing prayer, but also just again offer our love and thanks to you both and to your parents for Alyssa having being here and lending the home to you so you could present tonight.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
And we wish you well with your new home eventually, and also with your beautiful child growing up, and maybe blessed with other ones, of course, with God's plan. And we hope that you'll come in person to visit us and speak to our community sometime again.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay.
Through the prayers of our Holy Fathers, Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy upon us and save us. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.